I'm sure after all the time working on this budget, very little information does not readily come to mind for the city manager or the municipal finance officer. I am disappointed, particularly since I wasn't able to attend the meeting, that so many decisions were made at the first budget meeting, since a morning meeting usually does not have the attendance of an evening meeting. And I'm hoping sometime this evening you're going to refresh everybody's memory of what items were decided on what we used to call the wish list. I think you had a different term for it this time. But it would be good for us to understand exactly what was approved. Then I have some different sheets that I do have questions about. The first one is the fee schedule. If you read our code on parade or gatherings, it talks about a non-refundable fee to get your permit to do that. I looked in your fee schedule. I don't see a fee associated with a gathering event or a parade. And if it's non-refundable, I would think there would have to be some figure there, whether it's $5, $10, $15, $20 or $100. But there's nothing on the fee schedule in regards to gathering and parade. The only reason I know that is somebody asked me, what do we need to do to have a gathering? And I said, well, I don't know. Let me look it up. And I noticed that, and I thought, wow. Then on page 27, it's called the Projected General Fund Summary by Department page. You have 3 columns. The second column reads 17-18 Projected Year-End Fund, and then it says 17-18 Proposed. I'm thinking it's probably the 18-19 Proposed. I noticed that. You guys know how I love budgets. Then the other thing I had a question about is our new bulletproof glass and our new metal detector. Because if I remember correctly, when that was presented to the council, that was to come out of court funds. But when I look at your projected fund summary for 17-18 and 18-19, I don't see anything on there that would indicate that funds were used from those accounts. 17-18, there's no expenses listed at all. And for 18-19, there's just 4,600 and some change. I'm sure it was more than that. And I'm just curious how it should be reflected on this page, or on these two, well, one of those 2 pages, to show that there was an expense from those 2 accounts. There was something on the July 31st, but again, it was capital expenses, and I'm assuming that's what it was. And it's indicating $22,000 was spent, which sounds reasonable for the work that's being done, or maybe just part of it. $65,000 has been encumbered, but yet it's not reflected on those 2 pages, and that was my concern. Then on the general fund revenues, I see that we have $562,272 listed as the ad valorem offset, or for the street maintenance fund. I'm sorry. And that's a little bit of an increase from the 510. What concerned me more was I saw $165,000 coming from the hotel motel tax. So I went and looked at the July 31st report on the hotel motel tax. And so far, year to date, we have $155,000 in that account. So right now, we're $43,000 short, and there's 2 months remaining. 198 was projected, but I'm not sure. I know their vacation time is quickly, what? Oh, that's on accrual also? Hotel motel? I know sales tax is, but hotel motels? It's another one of those? Okay, well then there's a chance. But I was surprised that we're taking $165,000 from that, and I would like to know how it's going to be spent, because I also know with that particular line item, state law gives us guidelines exactly how it can be used. I know we simplify it and say heads to beds, but it's a little more sticky than that. And so I think it would be nice if the residents would have an idea of how you're going to utilize that $165,000. And then under the fire department, I see that this year we paid out $24,000 for a termination payout. That's year-to-date actual, but yet projected year-end, it's $20,000. So is the person that we paid the $24,000 to going to give us $4,000 back? No? Okay, so I had a question about that. And then dorm repairs. Last year, this 2017-18, we said $15,000. We reduced it to $10,000. But I remember a whole lot of conversation about the disrepair that our dorms are in. And so I'm really questioning, Council, why you've only allocated $10,000 to repair what was indicated by the past council. It was just totally destroyed and had to be fixed. So where are you going to get the revenue to do that if you're only going to put $10,000 in that particular line item? The next one I had questions about was the police department. I noticed that there were I consider substantial increases in incentive pay, not only for the police but for the civilians. Where's my ruler? Even though this year our projected year-end for overtime for the police department is $105,000, you've reduced it down to $90,000 for next year. The other thing that I was curious about, I noticed in court that when court does a warrant roundup, they have $8,000 set aside for jail time. The police department only has $300 for prisoner expense. And do we not put them behind bars anymore? Because from what I understand, we only have a holding jail, so we have to take them to a county facility to hold. And I'm not sure what the daily rate is for that, but I would think it wouldn't take very long to use up the $300. I looked in the WCCPD budget to see if maybe that's where it was, and I didn't find anything in regards to prisoner expense there either. So that's something else that I was concerned about. Then I noticed in special services, from the conversations I've heard, our marketing person who left, we weren't planning on replacing her, that we were going to be using interns, but yet I see we still have a salary listed there of $50,000 for a part-time person. I also noticed that in that particular department that we have over $9,000 for health insurance. I think it's not quite that much per person, right? Is it $9,000 insurance per person? No, I didn't think so.
We'll find it.
So I was curious about that. If we're doing away with that position, that $50,000 could go to the streets, or it could go to the prisoner expenses or whatever. But then another $9,000 there for insurance. I see we've got $10,000 for the 4th of July. I'm now hearing that what I used to thought were donated free items are not necessarily donated, that we're paying for them. Well, in my book, that no longer means they're free. Yeah, the person we're giving them to is not paying anything for them. I paid for it. So I would really encourage the council to reduce the amount of free stuff you give out, since you're using my tax dollar to purchase it. The light up, you have $30,000 that you've budgeted. $30,000 is a lot of money to me, and I would sure hope there would be some way that we could reduce that a little bit and still make it a fun time. But maybe if we get rid of some of the free stuff, it won't be quite so expensive. Then the other one that really fascinated me was we have something called special events, $30,000. Okay, we've talked about the 4th of July. We've talked about light up. What other events do we have that we need to allocate $30,000 to? Can you give me an example of something that would cost?
We'll find out. I mean, we'll give you an answer. I don't have it in front of us.
Then also in your personnel summary where you list all the different positions that the city is funding, again, you have that public affairs person still listed as a part-time employee. So instead of having 70.5 employees, you could have just plain 70 and use that money for our streets. The other thing I was concerned about is I noticed in court, salaries for this year were $231,000. For this year, it's requested $268,000. That's a $50,000 increase in salaries. And this budget was put together before you voted on the 6%. So that increase isn't because of the 6%, but that's $50,000. Are we planning on hiring another person in court? Was that ever discussed publicly?
In the past, we were allocating that position to the police department. We're allocating it to the court department now.
And as I mentioned earlier, they do have
Pam, just
8,000.
get 1 second. Because I just want to clarify something because I don't know the answer to this. We're shifting, it's still out of the same, I mean, it's not coming out of court security. That's my question.
No, it's coming
So
out of
it's
general
not
fund.
getting paid out of any of the fees. It's just general fund position. And was there a reason we moved it from the police department to just a I mean, okay, here's my problem. We're talking about a peace officer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to carry that commission? Is it going to be a member of the Windcrest Police Department?
Yes, it's still a member of the police
Okay,
department,
but
just
we're just-
making sure how much money is allocated to the court in general
Okay, so basically
detail.
it's just shifting the
It's
burden.
an accounting thing.
Okay. Oh, it's a Dawn thing. Oh, got it now.
Go for it, Don.
Wanted to make sure you didn't
Discussion.
These aren't teams.
Are we not allowed to discuss or not? I guess
Can I
It's,
answer
if it's a public hearing.
it's a public hearing. They can ask questions and we can ask for answers.
I'm a citizen, I'm public, if she'll yield me her time. Okay, the issue with this is we have police officers going out on warrant. Sometimes we send one officer out constantly. Warrant roundups, believe we had 5 officers out last week doing warrant roundups. Those additional hours haven't been allocated to the court. They've been overtime for the police department. We're trying to move it, make the police department more responsible for their hours and the court more responsible for the hours they're using.
So how many police officers?
2 on a regular basis.
So this would be a third?
With the overtime expenses and everything.
It's not a body, it's hours.
Not a body, it's
Thank
hours
you.
out of the police department.
Exactly.
They sent every available officer out last week on the warrants.
That's a good answer.
And so we're trying to get those hours attributed to the court versus it straight to the police department.
So it's overtime we're talking about.
Maybe regular time.
So why don't we list it under court overtime then instead of under salaries?
Because we don't know what it's going to be at this point. We're making an assumption that we're going to need the money. Again, as I stated at the last meeting, if we're going to go through the budget and choose individual lines, we should start at the top and go through each line.
Oh, I heard that comment. Yeah.
Yes, because there's,
But you see, you don't afford citizens time to come in and sit down and do that because it's not our responsibility, and I totally appreciate
No.
that. But, so this was the only avenue I had.
Just so we're clear, this should be a conversation with us, not you two.
Right. Right.
right.
I don't mind
I
having a
appreciate the
conversation, but it
input.
won't be between you two.
Okay. I'm almost done. Then I looked at the EDC, and I know you've heard me speak a number of times about the possibility as an alternative to your bond idea, that we reduce the percentage of sales tax that we give to our EDC. That $250,000 would probably be more than enough to meet their salary needs and provide them some extra capital for their projects. Well, according to their requested budget, their salaries are going to be $140,000, and that's with an EDC director and I think his administrative aide, but it doesn't tell me that here. So with all his other expenses, he says he's going to need $208,800. That includes some of his projects, his travel, his meals. He's got $50,000 for legal expenses, and hopefully he won't need to use that. So I would think that what I am a proponent of is that we reduce their sales tax to 1/8 of a cent, give the other amount to our street maintenance tax, so that we have closer to $750,000 to spend each year on our street rather than just the 500 and some. So I did check that out. So it is feasible. It's something we can really do if you'll take the time to examine it. And I really hope, as you provide information on the bond, that you impress upon people that there's an alternative, that bond isn't the only solution to this problem with our streets, that we have revenue coming in that possibly we could be using differently. Then I also noticed on the capital page that our Civic Center and our City Hall, there's absolutely nothing identified for any major or any update that we think might need to happen. I know in the Civic Center we did some kitchen equipment this last year to help make that a little more user-friendly. But we've got issues that I would think need to be addressed with our City Hall. I noticed you did get new chairs. Where did that come from? Not that you needed them. I understand that. But there's things in City Hall that needed to be updated and improved so that we look like, what is the old saying, if you're not changing, you're staying the same? Well, we need to make it look that we're moving ahead, that Windcrest isn't stuck in a spot, that we recognize that our homes, which is the same age for some of us as City Hall, I'm updating, I'm making it better, as you are and other people on council. So I would think we would be doing the same for our facility. And I think the only other thing is the streets. I'm really concerned about how we're going to address that, because as I just walk my little neighborhood, and I think it's probably reflective of our whole community, man, it seems like you fix one crack and come back 3 weeks later and there's another new one. So we definitely have to have, and I hate to tell you that, I think it's going to take more than $7 million, because $7 million, you're only addressing 3 of the major streets. You're not doing a thing about mine. And the Grand Canyon is bad. And the Grand Canyon is on Candleglow. That was my concern about the budget. And I really think you could have talked to me and answered any questions that I had. And I hope this spurs some discussion among you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will admit I have not looked at this document for a couple of years, but I thought our personnel manual said that everyone was to be evaluated by the month of May.
But for the 6% stipend, the answer is no.
No. Okay, well, I think
Yeah.
she was asking in general. Are our employees annually evaluated by their supervisors, and then are the department heads annually?
As far as the regular evaluations, the answer is yes. In reference to the 6% stipend, Mayor, as she asked the question, I answered that one, the 6%.
Correct.
No.
But that's a COLA, so it doesn't really matter about merit. You're getting it regardless.
I do not want to get into a debate on that, Mayor.
Right.
No.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I mean, that's how it's being presented, as a COLA.
Yes.
So these are written evaluations?
All right. So
They should be written evaluations, and from what I understand from reading the agenda, you went into executive session to look at the city manager's evaluations, I want to let you know I evaluated both he and the city secretary every year that I was on council. So they should have every year an evaluation by me. And I went in and I sat with them and explained to them why I evaluated them with them, because I don't give everybody 10s. And I also asked for their goals and their not only citywide but personal. And so those documents should be in their folders.